Thank you all for participating so actively and sharing information so generously today. Most of you met me this morning. In case you weren't at the opening session, my name is Samantha Morris. I am the coordinator of the Glossy Black-Cockatoo, of the whole species. No, I'm the coordinator of the Glossy Black Conservancy, along with Ellie Webb, who's not online at the moment because she's zooming in from Washington, DC, where it's some ungodly hour. And I'm also the convener of this forum. And this session that we're about to start is all about Flossy ID. And you'll see there's an acknowledgement of country up on the screen. And I would like to acknowledge that I'm on the lands of the Kumameri people, part of the Yuggabeh language group, otherwise known as the Gold Coast. So I would like to introduce our fabulous panelists for this session, a little bit different to the others. We've promised these people they don't need to prepare a presentation, and it's just going to be conversational. And that includes all of you as well, because we're conscious that there might be Flossy ID projects happening throughout Australia that we don't know about. So Erna Llenore is a member of Birdlife Australia Southern Highlands and a volunteer with Glossies in the Mist project. She's a passionate believer in the value of data collected by citizen scientists. Mike Barth studied ecology and wildlife biology in California, where he grew up, and has always had a passion for nature, especially birds. His specialty is threatened bird conservation, and his career spans more than 30 years working with birds on 2 continents, most recently working on Kangaroo Island on the South Australian Glossy Black-Cockatoo recovery program for 12 years. And Kelly Roach, who is leading the Saving Our Species Glossies in the Mist project, supporting Erna, Linda and Louise, who've been driving that project. And they have tirelessly created a lookbook of 300 individuals for comparison and ID. Kelly's role, having only recently moved to the region, is to facilitate data storage and help the lookbook become a tool that the wider glossy loving community can use, support and grow. So welcome to all of our panelists, and a reminder to everyone else, if you have any questions at any time, please pop them in the chat, and go easy on me because I'm facilitating as well as monitoring the chat for this session. So to get started, we've got a few questions for our panelists, and then we will open it up to discussion from you all, and we have a few things to show you on screen as well. We're going to get started with Kelly, who is going to remind us, Kelly, why is it that identifying female glossies specifically can contribute to shaping conservation strategies for this species?
It is an excellent question because it sounds super niche, doesn't it? So with Glossy Black-Cockatoos, there is quite a lot of information that we actually don't know. One of the things we really struggle with is understanding the movement patterns and ranging behaviour of southeastern Glossy Black-Cockatoos. We just don't understand that very well just yet. So we think that there might be seasonal migrants in some areas, like in southeast Queensland. And we think that that's likely to be in response to changing resource availability or for breeding needs. And that may be happening in other areas as well. But, you know, it's just an area that we don't really know yet. So another thing that Matt Cameron studied back in 2005 was about glossy movements, and he found that there was a correlation between group size and environmental conditions. So when you normally see the glossies in either singles, pairs or trios, you would see these larger group sizes forming more often when there was sort of food resources a bit scarce, like in droughts. But we really don't know a great deal about the social structure of southeastern Glossy Black-Cockatoo beyond that tendency to get around in pairs or trios. So one thing that's really interesting about following individual birds is that it can help teach us more about their social behaviours. So The other thing about identifying individual glossies is that it connects the people doing the observations to the species. So when you go into what's in the National Recovery Plan, which is in draft form at the moment, there are 7 strategies that have been identified to recover this species. And so in a nutshell, they're 1, to protect and enhance and increase habitat. 2 is to reduce threats like loss of hollows and loss of food resources, that sort of thing. 3 is to help species be resilient to climate change. 4 is monitoring population trends to see if recovery actions are working. And 5 is improving knowledge of the biology and ecology to inform recovery work. And 6 is maintain and increase participation in conservation. And that is where the community engagement side of things really takes the fore. And finally, the last one was to coordinate, review and report on progress. So identifying female glossies contributes to at least 3 of those recovery actions in a fairly obvious sort of tangible way. But really most significantly is growing the love and engaging people in the glossies of their area. So Erna will tell you more about that, getting people together to share their love of birds in their area, get more interested in it, leads them to want to be involved in protecting the resources that are happy, that make glossies happy. So it does become contagious, and the momentum kind of grows and the action follows.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, I'll stop because I'm going on.
Erna, a great segue into your project, Glossies in the Mist, which has been running for quite some time and has built, one of the most collegiate groups of citizen scientists really working together to capture this imagery and information about female glossies. Can you tell us a little bit about Glossies in the Mist and how you started?
Yeah. If Lauren wasn't watching, I could say, oh, this is how I started it. But the reality is that Lauren started it when she was doing the job that Kelly's doing now. She was down in the Highlands. She and a couple of community members wanted to, raise the profile of Glossy Black-Cockatoos and were hoping to engage the community more. So they went around to various community meetings and things and, started to whip up a bit of interest in glossies. And one of the ways they did that was to encourage people to report sightings and take photos of the glossies that they were seeing. And so, she began to get submissions of photos and started to look for resemblances. Is this the same one that was photographed nearby? Is it a different one? And so on. And then she got to the point where a paid person couldn't do the work anymore, or it would be the only thing she was doing. So she asked me if I would take it over, which I did. And, I started to continue the work that she'd done and encourage photographers to send more photos. And fairly quickly, that got to the point where I couldn't manage the workload anymore either. So I invited a friend to join the team, and then we needed to invite another friend to join the team. And I think it sort of grew far beyond what Lauren ever expected. I think it really quietly, it was Lauren's sort of Trojan horse to get in contact with landholders so that she could do plantings. But once we got our hands on it, we just really got into the ID side of it, and it turned into a monster. So that's
how
where we are.
How have you kept, and we've got the citizen science session coming up later, so this isn't just going to be about the citizen science element, but how have you kept those citizen scientists engaged for this period of time in the project?
Look, I just think it's all about communication. We feed back to them all the time. And, you know, we make a big fuss. Oh, thank you so much. And this is so exciting. And by the way, your bird was photographed a month ago in this other place. And, you know, it's a story. We make it a story for them. And so they're keen to continue to contribute. And is this the same bird? You know, tell us a bit more and so on. Yeah, it's just all community engagement, really.
I guess this is a question for all the panelists. Kelly, you've got your hand up, so I'll ask this of you, and then you can add to Erna's comments. But what are the actual logistics like of having all of these people submit photos of birds? And you might want to defer that to Erna and say what you were going to say, Kelly.
Yeah, I will let Erna answer that one.
It's a nightmare. It's really I've been the primary communication person, and so the photos have come to me and we upload them, or I mostly upload them. One of the other girls on the team takes a lot herself because she's in an area where she gets lots of local sightings, and she goes out and photographs them and she uploads them. So we put them all onto a shared Google Drive, and then we work with them together on that drive. But because we've now got so many Flossies and so many re-sightings of Flossies, that's just unmanageable in terms of data storage. And hence, through Kelly, we've been able to make this fabulous arrangement with Nature Mapper to get our data stored over there. And, you know, like I'm getting personal messages from Google saying, oh my God, you've got too much stuff in here. And other people on the team are having the same problem. And we were worried about where will this go? Are we going to have to start shelling out, to pay for it? Whereas it's now been organised that the data will go across to Nature Mapper and it'll stay there. And people will in future report sightings, as we were talking about in the earlier session, directly into Nature Mapper, and they'll gather it all up in one place. So
that's awesome.
It's great now, or it will be great when we get the data transferred across.
And we will have a look at some of the images that volunteers and citizen scientists have submitted in a moment. Were you going to add something to the conversation, Kelly? You're just muted at the moment. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to mute. There's a very loud steel train going past my window. I was going to say about driving that engagement and keeping it going long term. I think that there are a few additional things to take from what Erna has already started on. I think naming your birds and engaging people by letting them have that special connection to birds by naming them after they've put the effort in to take the photos is one little technique that has quite a lot of power to it. And I think from the point of view of people in government positions like me, I can see that a great way to sustain community engagement is when people are putting in blood, sweat and tears to projects like this. When you see a problem or an issue that needs to be tackled and solved, that's where you can step in and really provide some help to support the people in the community who are trying to solve problems. You may not be able to have time to do everything all the time, but you can just see when people are saying, I really need help with this one issue, getting in there to solve a problem and get people back on their way to amplify what they're doing and make it easier for them. I reckon that's a really key method for sustaining community engagement over time.
Thanks, Kelly. Mike, I was going to ask you, because you've been doing fieldwork as a professional ecologist for decades. You don't look that long. But the role of citizen scientists has really changed and evolved over that time. How have you seen that change? Especially around Glossy ID work, but generally as well.
Yeah, it's amazing what the citizen science aspect of all this has contributed, or like over my lifetime. I've seen every project I've ever worked on has had some element of, volunteers, community volunteers. So whether that was California condors back in America, or Western ground parrots in WA, or these glossy blacks here and on Kangaroo Island, it's always been a huge element of the recovery of these species is landholders allowing us permission to access places that we need to get to where the animals occur, and people doing plantings and things for the species has been a major contribution. And this like, there's a lot of good photographers out there now, and I reckon we can build on this this female ID thing with Glossies and make it bigger and better. But what I guess what the obstacle will be is storage and organizing the data, and so that has to be driven by somebody, I guess. Unless we get AI to help us out in the future, and hopefully that will happen someday.
Kelly?
One of the benefits of going via Nature Mapper is that it's not now just up to 3 individuals to maintain and service that lookbook and to individually identify birds. So once Nature Mapper is up and running with this Glossy project, which won't be too far away, moderators can be signed on to the project, and then that task can actually be shared. It's still a human effort that gets the job done, but it builds on the commitment in community. It shares knowledge, and it makes sure that we're getting it right, and it just also grows our whole network, and allows us to roll this kind of solution out across much greater areas than it's currently sort of getting set up for, which will then lead into your AI functions.
And I think because we do know Glossies have a home range that they normally occur in. So when you get, say, a photo from a certain area, you should theoretically start trying to match with that local area rather than some place 100 kilometers away. That's because it's very unlikely that that same bird's going to be that far away. So and I think that's what Erna and company have done, and with Glossies in the Mist, is they start by trying to match incoming photos to known birds from that particular area where the photo came from. And so Nature Mapper could be used in that same way.
That's exactly right, Mike. We're going to have new projects as they come online. We'll have a project boundary, and people can elect to go, oh, I'm in this area, I can put my sighting in here, and it'll get looked at on a local level. So exactly right. Sorry, Erna.
So take us through it step by step, Erna. You have some citizen scientists, they're out in the field, they're taking photos of female Glossies. What do they do with them? How do they submit them to you?
At the moment, they go to the website. What is it? DEH now? Who are you now, Kelly?
Say again, sorry, Erna.
What's the page that they report on technically at the moment?
So there's the DQ.
Yeah, you see where
I know. It's really our department's website has a Glossies in the Mist page. It's got a Glossy Black-Cockatoo page, and then a link on that page takes you to a Glossies in the Mist sighting form. So it's often difficult for people to locate it because it needs search engine optimization to really kind of lead people into there. And there are a lot of other Glossy projects happening which could easily redirect people into another location on the web. Yeah.
So they get to this submission page, they upload their photo, and then what happens?
Uh,
For me has been they haven't got to the submission page.
Mhm.
Basically,
Yeah.
they throw in the towel. So then they write to me because they've seen something somewhere, with an email address, or they know someone else who submitted a photo, and so I direct it. And this has been part of the problem. And so having Nature Mapper as a direct reporting spot is going to solve that problem, which will be great. So at this stage, I upload the photos, or one of the other girls in the team uploads the photos to the Google Drive. We've got so many now that we have done what Mike says, and we start looking at similar birds right in the immediate area where that bird's been seen. We created the lookbooks that you've referred to, which are, thank you, Sam. It's a PowerPoint thing. Lauren set it up in the very first place, but we've just been adding slides. Each bird has at least one slide, but you can see this example, Winifred. She's been cited, 6 times. Keep going, let's see how many more. No, so 6 times. And we will create a page for her. It's got data on it, where we saw it, the dates of the sightings, down the bottom, more immediate information about the location. The photographer is the initials there, and where we've got that photo sorted. So the lookbooks are sorted into low, medium, and high coloration. So Winifred, you can see, is a low. So we've got some clues when the photo comes in. She's got a certain density of markings, and so we'll go to that part of the lookbook and start to sort of cycle through. And these days, because we've got so many Flossies, once we've cycled through, we've probably still got about 7 or 8 that we think she might be. So we will then go to the Google Drive, where we've got a larger store of more photos, because we try to keep these lookbooks fairly, simple, so that we can flick through them fairly quickly. We also created a publicly accessible version of the lookbook, which has a bit less data. It doesn't have detail about who photographed or the bird, or precisely where, to encourage people to have a look at, to flip through and see if they can find their bird, to help us a little bit with the ID. We haven't blogged that very much yet, but we probably should at some stage go back and encourage people to look through the publicly accessible lookbooks. They're online.
So the lookbook is awesome, and if other people would like to access that, I'm sure Erna would love to share that with you. What have you learnt as a result of collecting these images and this data? And that question goes to the 3 panelists. What specific learnings have we got?
Oh, someone else go first. I could talk about that for an hour.
Kelly or Mike?
I would say, if you're going to take something on like this, be careful, because your life might get sucked down into a project as enormous as this.
So I'll say this, that for me, identifying females by their facial pattern, that started probably, I don't know, way back 10, 12 years ago on Kangaroo Island, when I was monitoring nests there. And we have had and probably still have a banding program, so leg banding birds as nestlings. And so this was probably 12 years ago, that I was taking photos of banded females who I could identify by their numbered leg bands. And I started noticing after a few consecutive years that it was the same females, that I could tell them apart just by the facial patterns. And I started saving the photos and matching them. And then I did a poster way back at an AOC conference, just proving that this worked. And so from there, this has grown and grown. But now on the East Coast, we have no other way of telling individuals apart. So for here, we've already identified some females in the Northern Rivers area up here. at nests and then out in the field. And so that gives us an idea of their home range without having to put bands on their legs. So one of the females that was nesting near the coast last year was identified. Well, during the nesting, she was feeding about 3 kilometers roughly away from the nest. But then outside of the nesting season, we had photos of her 23 kilometers north up the coast. So for us, that was kind of a huge breakthrough, giving us an idea how far they're ranging in their home, within their home range, and a little bit of idea of seasonal movements. And that's huge for us because we have no other way to know other than this facial ID process of how much they're moving and where they're spending their time throughout the year. It's to me, it's because we knew all that on Kangaroo Island with the resightings with the numbered leg bands. So we knew home ranges on KI, but over here, there's a lot of unknowns. We don't know how far they're actually moving during 1 year. So yeah, that's where it really comes in. And also knowing, if you know how many adult females are in any given population, then you know what the breeding potential is, which is a massive thing for us as ecologists. So if there's 20 females in the whole northern rivers and we're only seeing a fraction of them with young every year, what's going on? Like why are we only seeing a handful of those 20 birds with offspring? Is there a problem with nesting success? Like all that stuff comes into play once we can identify individual birds, and especially females, because they're the ones that are going to be producing the offspring.
A couple of questions in the chat, and lots of people saying how awesome this work is and recognizing your contribution, Erna and Kelly and Lauren, who initiated this. Trish said, great info, provides data on where the birds are moving around to feed, nest, and also post-nesting. One of the questions that has come in is from Cheryl, wanting to know whether feather patterns change as flossies age or molt.
Mike, you're probably the best one to answer that, please.
As far as we can tell, the yellow on the face and head pretty much stays the same or similar, close enough that we can keep identifying. So it looks like the feather follicle must be genetically programmed to produce either a black or a yellow feather on their face. And yeah, like those photos showed, those birds that in that bit were females with not much yellow, but that can range from some females have almost a total yellow head and barely any black feathers. But the tail feathers, they do appear to change over time. So when we get photos of females, we try to get not only right and left profiles of the head, but also the tails, because every female's tail is unique as well. And that can change over time. And we think that the black barring on their tails gets thinner and fades with age. So if you see a female with barely any barring or very, very thin barring, it's most likely an older bird. And we know they can live 20, 30, maybe more years. So, yeah.
It's great to see, like, not all of these photos are high res photos taken with professional cameras, obviously, but you can still, like, especially with these photos here, can see they're quite pixelated or low resolution, but enough colouring to help you match it up against other birds, obviously. There was one other question, and then Erna, I think you had something to say from Kath, who wanted to know if Nature Mapper might let you see the source data to make visualizations. So I don't know if you know the answer to that, Kelly. Otherwise, we'll pose it to Aaron tomorrow.
Did you want me to speak
Yeah.
now? No?
Yep.
I think you'll always have access to anything you upload yourself in Nature Mapper, and I think you'll have access to records that have been verified by the moderators who have kind of shown themselves to have the knowledge required to do this little task. It's still being constructed as we speak, and there is scope for refining the Nature Mapper Glossies in the Mist project page as time goes by. We're just going to try things out and see what works for people and get feedback from people as it evolves. So if that's something specifically that you're looking for, then Kath, we can put that to Nature Mapper, or you can put that to Aaron tomorrow if you're coming into that session, and he can explain whether we've got capacity to do that within the program as it is. He's great at problem solving and coming up with solutions for things. So if you don't ask, it won't automatically happen. So if that's something you want, yeah, jump in.
Thanks, Kelly. And Erna, I cut you off before. Did you have something you were about to say?
I don't think you cut me off. But I think that we do. I hear what Mike's saying about the tails changing, and we're very aware of that. But I would like to encourage people to use the tails as well if the sighting is comparatively close to the previous one. So we started out emphasising left side, right side, because hopefully people who are watching know that they're actually not symmetrical. So you really do need to get both sides of the face. But sometimes with some of them, and I've talked to Mike about this, we think there are similarities in families. So sometimes we get a floss and then we get another one a couple of years later who looks very similar but not exactly the same. And we wonder if it might be a daughter. And if you've got tails, you can look at, well, that was an old floss who looked like that 2 years ago, and this is a young floss who looks like it now. So having a good tail image can really help with some of the mysteries.
I think
That's awesome.
You could also get 2 sightings recorded close together in time, and it will let you know, well, is it the same bird or definitely not, because look how different the tail is.
The tail is, yeah.
So especially now that we're doing more and more community-based surveys, and we're having more and more great glossy counts and nest search field trips together and things like that.
So there's a question from Danny in the chat. She does apologise because she had to pop out, but a few questions here. How many individuals have you identified? How long did it take to get to that number? And how confident are you in the identity? Are you ever a little bit unsure?
Oh, a better question would be, are we ever sure?
So let's say, how many individuals have you identified so far, Erna?
We're up beyond 230, but some of them we've only seen once. Some of them we've seen, up to 8 or 9 times. And in those cases, we can be pretty confident because she's been in the same area. The markings are the same essentially, and so on. Because of the history of the project, it was never a scientific project, and because, as you pointed out, the quality of the photos is not always great, and the primary role at the beginning was to encourage photographers. Even if we got crummy photos, we were inclined to say, woohoo, you've got a new Flossie, congratulations, what would you like to name her? Just because of the encouraging people aspect of it. So no, I'm really looking forward to when AI is doing this, and over time we can improve our confidence levels substantially.
And so how long did it take you to get to that 200 plus birds that you've identified?
Oh dear, I can't remember how long ago Lauren started it.
Feel free to
it's still
chime in
around.
there, Lauren. Yep.
I think, yeah, my guess is it's probably been since about 2019, but it's gone on for so long. I've lost track.
Sounds about right from what I've seen on the files from before I started. Yeah.
So 5 years or so. And so back to that issue around confidence, and whether you're certain, whether you have any uncertainty around identifying the birds. What's the feeling there, Erna, or others?
We have three of us now look at every bird. When we started, as I said, it was just Lauren, and then it was basically just me. But now the three of us on the team all look, and it's pretty unusual that all three of us will all agree first time round that it's the same bird. And, there will be quite a lot of discussion, trying to persuade each other whether it is or whether it isn't. And of course, as anyone who's tried to do Flossy ID knows, it's very rare to get really good angles on both sides and a really good image of the tail. So you might have good photos of Floss from the first sighting and then crappy photos the next time, and you can't be sure. Can you scroll down to the more colourful ones, perhaps? Yeah. Thanks, Sam. Yeah.
Like this?
Well, like these are all low density coloration. See down at the bottom. So you're still in just the low section. So we've got further down medium density and then high density.
Gosh, I didn't realise it was quite so large, but there we go.
Yeah. Well, this is only a segment. We've had to cut it up.
There was one you showed as you flick through there with a lot of yellow in her tail, and that varies significantly with females as well as the amount of yellow that can appear in the tail. That one you can see lots of yellow. Yeah.
And so, Erna, obviously there are challenges with identifying the birds and attributing them to birds that have already been identified. What role has AI played so far? It doesn't sound like much. And where is AI going to take us with identifying female glossies?
Oh, it's a question for Aaron tomorrow. The three of us who are doing it, we have loved it, but we're just feeling like it's too much now, and it's the numbers are getting so big that it's almost becoming more guesswork than it was, because there are so many similarities. So yeah, we're really looking forward to AI coming on and seeing what it can do with it. Hopefully it won't hallucinate too much, but we're probably hallucinating ourselves.
Mike, what are the next steps for AI? Where's AI going to take us with this?
Well, I hope it solves all those issues, but I'm not a techo expert, so really I think we're going to have to contract the techos that know how to do that and probably they're either going to have to donate their services, some tech company, or we're going to have to fork out quite a bit of money from what I understand, because I think Brian Hawkins engaged somebody, I don't know if it was Google, but and it looked like it might be quite expensive to pay someone to work that out. But I think that AI is becoming mainstream, so it seems like it will be the future. But just looking at those photos there, and I know from taking photos of glossies for many years now that the same bird can look different. And even though I know it's the same bird, the way that they fluff those feathers out, or the lighting, like all these things, the angle that you're getting the photo from can make the same bird look different. And so I don't know how AI would manage that, because you're never getting the same exact angle, and the bird's never posing the same exact way. Like so there's a lot of, right now, guesswork, I guess, and detective work really is what you guys are doing, using not only that photo, but the tails probably, and the circumstances, the area that bird was in. How does AI, how's it going to use all that? I hope that it can. And I want it to. Take a lot of legwork out for those of us on the ground trying to do this.
So Brian, you're going to weigh in on this, and then Kelly's got her hand up, so we'll go to you after Brian, Kelly.
Yeah, I was inspired by Danny's collaboration with Google on doing AI recognition of calls. So I got in touch with Tom from Google about them trying to do AI recognition of flossies. And he said, well, they could have a go at it, but there's already a group that's expert in doing AI recognition of individual animals. They're called Wild Me. So I got in touch with Wild Me, and they've never done birds before because other bird species, their plumage is not consistent between molts. So I think, and Erna and Louise sent me a bucket load of glossy photos, and I was able to go through them and get photos from the same birds over multiple years, and send them to Wild Me so that they could see that, yes, the plumage is consistent over time in a single flossy, and they're really keen to do it, and they're looking for funding through their existing funding sources. They're based in the US, so if you look at their website, Wild Me, they do a lot of individual recognition of marine mammals and cheetahs and hyenas and that sort of thing. So they are keen, but if they can't get funding, I think it's going to cost about 40,000 Australian.
Which in the grand scheme of things is 4/5 of a 15th of nothing, but when it comes to conservation of a single species is so hard to come across. Kelly, you wanted to add to this, and then Danny, I was wondering if you wanted to weigh in on the machine learning AI component, because you've been doing work in that space. I'll give you a moment to consider that, but Kelly.
Sure. With regards to the Nature Mapper piece of work, we have included in our brief with Nature Mapper that they prepare this data set and new data coming in to set up ready for AI to help with the recognition of individuals through the images. We haven't discussed the potential for using acoustic recognizers through this, but what we have done is set up the input process for the Nature Mapper site to request people look specifically for those headshots, so they get the side views and the tails and the chin when they're trying to actually go and capture glossies. So for the people who are dedicated to actually proactively going out looking for glossies, they'll know exactly what types of photos that they should aim to collect. With the data set that we have in the lookbook, we may include a work stream around revisiting the confidence with which each of the birds are identified and trying to apply a confidence rating to the certainty that that bird is in fact the same bird, because with AI programs, you're always going to be getting results that depend on those really early certainties that you put in your data set, because once you're training it, you actually have to be 100% sure that you've got individuals. We could even go and do some specific photography to train the AI so that we've got known birds to use as the basis for training the machine learning. And then that can extend out, and as it grows with testing new data, it gets better and better over time. But yeah, it's not there yet by far, but we're setting things up with a view to that being the way we do business in that platform when that piece of software becomes available. The other thing that's kind of a little bit difficult about it is that it's not generalizable between different species particularly well, of course. So there will need to be directed investment towards this species for us to get that going. But I'm confident that over time we'll get there.
Thanks, Kelly. Great comment from Adrienne Canaris in the chat saying this is a classic example of the power of citizen science. Can't imagine ever having funding that would allow for this level of study and analysis. Great work indeed. Danny, did you have any comments on where machine learning or AI might take us with this kind of processing of large amounts of photographic data?
Yeah, I mean, I don't work in this space per se, but the problems are pretty similar, I think, to the acoustic data issues that we've faced and continue to face. Yeah, just to reiterate what Kelly was saying, I think you guys have such an amazing data set where you've done the hard work. And that is the first step in getting a powerful AI model. So the fact that you've gone through these photos, you've identified them as best as you possibly can, we could kind of, easily take that and test that in what we call like a closed population model. So where we have known individuals and we just kind of throw stuff at the model and see if it can identify the ones that we are confident in. And then once we've sort of figured that out, we can then apply it to like an open population model where there's unknown individuals and see if it can at least separate them. And this is the approach we're taking with the vocal individuality that I mentioned earlier today. I reckon maybe we could get a student onto this. There's so many computer science students who love this kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk about integrating photos with audio as well. I get asked that question all the time. So I reckon we can do it. I reckon I could find some really smart computer scientists to come on board.
That would be
Excellent.
excellent.
Well,
Yeah.
everyone just heard Danny promise to do that, didn't they?
Yeah.
So just write that down as an action item from the forum.
Yeah.
Hey Sam, can I just share one more learning that we
Yes.
learned in the Northern Rivers area? So when I came over here to the East Coast from Kangaroo Island in South Australia, I had heard and read, and that's what everyone was under the impression, that Glossies in the eastern states breed every other year. And when I came over here, I was very skeptical because from my experience on Kangaroo Island, pairs pretty much attempted to nest every year, and we documented that, especially with the banded birds. So, and they would come back to the same nest and we could identify them each year at those nests. And here we finally were able to do that this year. So the nest that David Brooks mentioned, one of the few nests that we know of in the Northern Rivers. I'll just see if I can share my screen. And I'll show you what I mean. Is this going to work? Start. Oh.
Yep.
See what happens here.
That's working.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. It's broadcasting something. It's not working. No. It's not working.
Not working.
We can just see your the cover of your screen saying you want to share your screen, but we can't actually see what
It
you're
didn't
sharing.
do it.
Yeah.
Oh well. Anyway, we were able to ID this particular female at that nest hollow. So she originally nested they found the nest in August 2022, and that one fledged successfully. And then there was no activity in 2023 at that hollow whatsoever. And then in March of this year, in 2024, the nest was active and we got photos of her, and it was the same exact female sitting in the same exact pose at the hollow entrance. And that bird is named Pretty. And she was successful again this year in fledging another young female. So anyway, so we confirmed that yes, they are, or at least that bird was nesting every other year in the same exact hollow through facial ID.
Thanks, Mike. So I'm just wondering if there's any other questions from our participants for the panel, and also the panel were curious when we caught up just in the moments before you all joining the Zoom as to whether there were other Flossy ID projects happening. If anyone online is involved in a Flossy ID project they would like to tell us about, that would be great as well. Otherwise, got one final question of the panelists, which isn't surprising, and that is one tip you would offer to other groups that would like to go down this Flossy ID path or trying to get a Flossy ID project off the ground. What is your one hot tip, Erna? I know you've got more than one.
Mine isn't actually about the ID process itself. Mine is about getting people on board. And that is do what Lauren did. She spoke to groups, but she approached people as individuals. I would not have put my hand up to do this if she'd just gone to a meeting, because I would have thought someone else would be better at this than me. But because she came to me as an individual and said, I think you can do this, I did it. And that's how I increased our team. And because of that encouragement, I've gone on to do a whole lot of other stuff that I wouldn't have dreamt of. So approach people individually and you'll get a much better response.
That's some great advice there, Erna. Mike, do you have anything to share? One hot tip for people trying to go down this path? And you might take some of this advice yourself, because we're about to roll out a Flossy ID project in Southeast Queensland.
Well, one of the things that I have found really useful, and I'm a part of, I think for probably 5 different what we call glossy squads, and each one of those in each region uses some sort of chat group. So it's like, and a lot of them are using a WhatsApp chat group, and they communicate that way, and that chat group stays active through this whole thing. And so whenever any of us in that glossy squad chat group find anything new or get a fantastic photo, or I find a nest or someone finds a nest, it goes in there and we all get excited and the momentum continues. And so I think with a Flossy ID project, it could work in a similar way, and everyone kind of updating each other in some way, because if you're just out there on your own, it's not as fun. That's what I thought. If you're part of a group, it's way better, and it's way more exciting when you hear other people and see images that they're getting. And so that's my suggestion is, form a group and try to recruit new people into it as well. If someone shows interest, get them on board.
Yeah. Lauren Hooks just commented, big shout out to Flossy ID extraordinaire Louise Docker. And Belinda's just reminded us that there's a great Flossy ID project in East Gippsland being led by Deb Sullivan. Janet Carew, who spoke earlier today, has been taking lots of photos on her property at her site, and she's named some, but a lot of data yet to mine. And Spencer's been identifying and collecting photos of the flock around his area for more than 6 years. So heaps of data out there. Kelly, one hot tip from you for other people going down this path. You're muted as well, Kelly.
Thank you. I think if you're here in this forum already, you're already doing the thing I was going to suggest, which is to get in touch with other people that are doing this already, figure out what their problems have been, how they're going about doing this, and see if that works for you too, or whether you can adapt knowledge people have gathered already to suit what you're doing. And that way you're just not wasting your precious energy, and you're getting the benefit of this whole plethora of people who've come before, or if, you know, maybe you're one of the people who's come before. You could have been doing this for years, but yeah, just you rely on your community, draw on the strengths and experience of others, and celebrate when people do achieve huge things. I think it's really great to acknowledge people's effort in this space, because this is where big changes can happen.
That's awesome, Kelly. Thank you so much to our panelists for joining us, and I hope everybody